You think you know college roommate drama until your best friend steals your social security number to apply for scholarships in your name, then uses that money to fund her luxury lifestyle while you eat ramen noodles every night. But what she didn't know is that I'm an accounting major who noticed every discrepancy in my financial aid records, and I was about to expose her fraud in the most spectacular way possible, right as she was giving her valedictorian speech. Hi everyone, I'm Amanda, and I need to tell you about the most satisfying revenge I've ever executed against someone who betrayed my trust in the worst possible way. This story takes place during my senior year at State University. I was 22, majoring in accounting with a minor in forensic investigation, and I thought I had the perfect college setup. My roommate for 3 years had been Chloe, who I met during freshman orientation. Chloe was everything I wasn't: outgoing, popular, effortlessly beautiful, and from a wealthy family. I was quiet, studious, and from a working-class background where every dollar mattered. Despite our differences, we became best friends. Chloe helped me navigate social situations and introduced me to her friend group. I helped her with her studies and kept her organized. It seemed like the perfect friendship. What I didn't know was that Chloe had been systematically stealing my identity for over 2 years, using my personal information to apply for scholarships and financial aid that she wasn't eligible for. She had been living off money that was supposed to be helping me pay for college, while I worked 3 part-time jobs and ate ramen noodles to survive. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how I discovered her betrayal and how I destroyed her entire future in the most public way imaginable. The financial struggles versus the luxury lifestyle. To understand why Chloe's betrayal was so devastating, you need to understand our different financial situations. I came from a family where my dad worked construction and my mom was a part-time nurse. They were amazing parents who worked incredibly hard, but they couldn't afford to pay for my college education. I was entirely dependent on scholarships, grants, and student loans to pay for school. I applied for every scholarship I could find: academic merit scholarships, need-based grants, minority scholarships, even tiny $500 scholarships from local community organizations. Every bit of financial aid mattered because without it, I couldn't afford to stay in school. Even with financial aid, I worked 3 part-time jobs to cover living expenses. I worked at the campus library, tutored other students, and had a weekend job at a local restaurant. I lived on a strict budget, bought used textbooks, and wore the same clothes for years. Chloe, on the other hand, came from money. Her father owned a successful business, and her mother was a doctor. They could easily afford to pay her tuition, room and board, and living expenses. But here's what I started noticing during our junior year. Chloe was living way beyond even her family's means. She had designer clothes, expensive electronics, and went on expensive trips during school breaks. She ate out at expensive restaurants regularly, got her hair and nails done at high-end salons, and always had the latest everything. When I asked her about it, she said her parents had increased her allowance because she was doing so well in school. She also mentioned that she had been really successful at finding scholarships and grants. "I've just gotten really good at writing scholarship essays," she told me. "I've probably gotten like $30,000 in scholarship money this year alone." I was impressed and a little jealous. Despite my excellent grades and financial need, I had only managed to secure about $8,000 in scholarships that year. Wow, that's amazing. Can you help me with some applications? I could really use more scholarship money. Oh, sure, Chloe said. I'll send you some links to the scholarships I applied for. She never sent me those links. The first thing that made me suspicious happened in October of our senior year. I was checking my student account online to make sure my financial aid had been processed correctly when I noticed something odd. According to the system, I had received a scholarship called the Merit Excellence Award for $5,000. I had never heard of the scholarship, and I definitely hadn't applied for it. I called the financial aid office to ask about it. "Hi, I'm checking on my account, and I see a scholarship listed that I don't remember applying for. Can you give me more information about the Merit Excellence Award?" "Let me look that up for you," the financial aid advisor said. "Yes, I see that scholarship on your account. It's a need-based merit scholarship for students with exceptional academic performance and demonstrated financial need. When did I apply for this? I don't remember the application process. According to our records, your application was submitted in March of last year. That was impossible. In March of last year, I was dealing with my grandmother's death and had barely managed to keep up with my regular coursework. I definitely hadn't applied for any new scholarships. Can you tell me what information was used in the application? I can't give you specific details over the phone, but I can tell you that the application included your academic transcripts, your FAFSA information, and a personal essay about your financial circumstances. Is there any way I can see a copy of the application? You can request copies of your financial aid documents from our office. There's a small processing fee. I requested the documents, and when I received them a week later, I was shocked. The scholarship application had been filled out using all of my personal information, my social security number, my GPA, my family's financial information from my FAFSA. But the personal essay wasn't written by me. The essay described financial struggles that were similar to mine, but the writing style was completely different from how I write. It was more flowery and dramatic than my typical writing style. As I read the essay, I realized it sounded exactly like how Chloe wrote. That scholarship application made me realize that something very wrong was happening. Someone had used my personal information to apply for financial aid without my knowledge. My first thought was that it might be some kind of identity theft from an outside source. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that whoever had done this had access to very specific information about me, information that would be difficult for a stranger to obtain. They had my social security number, my GPA, detailed information about my family's finances, and enough knowledge about my personal situation to write a convincing essay about my financial struggles. The only people who had access to all of that information were my family members and my roommate Chloe. And Chloe had specifically mentioned being successful at finding scholarships this year. I decided to do some investigating. As an accounting major with a minor in forensic investigation, I had learned how to trace financial records and identify discrepancies. I started applying those skills to my own situation. First, I requested copies of all my financial aid documents from the past 3 years. I wanted to see if there were other scholarships or grants that I hadn't applied for myself. What I found was shocking. Over the past 2 years, there were 7 different scholarships and grants listed on my account that I had never applied for, totaling over $35,000. All of them had been applied for using my personal information, but none of them had been applied for by me. But here's the thing that made it even more suspicious. None of that scholarship money had actually gone to pay my tuition or living expenses. According to the financial aid records, the money had been disbursed directly to me via check or direct deposit. Except I had never received any of those payments. Someone had been intercepting scholarship money that was awarded in my name. Next, I started investigating how someone could have accessed my personal information to apply for these scholarships. I thought back to all the times Chloe had helped me with financial aid paperwork or been present when I was filling out applications. Then I remembered something that made my blood run cold. 2 years ago, Chloe had helped me set up online banking and student account access. She said she was really good with technology and wanted to help me get organized with my finances. During that process, she had seen me enter my social security number, my banking passwords, and my student account login information. I immediately logged into all of my accounts to check for unauthorized access. What I found confirmed my worst suspicions. My student email account had been accessed from Chloe's laptop multiple times over the past 2 years. Someone using her computer had been reading my emails, including correspondence from scholarship organizations and financial aid offices. My online banking showed that checks from scholarship organizations had been deposited into my account, but then immediately transferred out to accounts I didn't recognize. My student account showed that scholarship disbursements had been changed from my original bank account to different accounts. Chloe had been using my personal information to apply for scholarships in my name, then redirecting the money to accounts she controlled. She had literally been stealing my identity to fund her luxury lifestyle. The financial forensics. As an accounting student, I was trained in financial forensics and fraud investigation. I decided to treat this like a professional case and gather comprehensive evidence of what Chloe had been doing. I created a detailed spreadsheet documenting every fraudulent scholarship application, every intercepted payment, and every unauthorized account access. Over 2.5 years, Chloe had applied for 12 different scholarships using my identity. Stolen over $47,000 in scholarship money that was awarded to me. Accessed my email account 67 times from her computer. Changed my banking information 8 times to redirect payments. Used my social security number to apply for credit cards in my name. But the most infuriating discovery was what she had done with the money. I was able to trace where the stolen scholarship funds had gone by cross-referencing dates and amounts with Chloe's social media posts and lifestyle changes. The $5,000 from the Merit Excellence Award had been spent on a spring break trip to Cancun that Chloe had posted about extensively on Instagram. An $8,000 scholarship for students overcoming adversity had been used to buy the designer handbags and clothes I had seen Chloe wearing. A $12,000 grant for first-generation college students, which I actually qualified for, but Chloe didn't, had paid for her new MacBook Pro and iPad. While I was working 3 jobs and eating ramen noodles, my roommate and supposed best friend was living in luxury using money that had been stolen from me. At this point, I had comprehensive evidence of Chloe's identity theft and fraud. I could have reported her to the police immediately, but I wanted to confront her first to see if she would confess and try to make things right. I also wanted to document her response for legal purposes. I set up a recording device in our dorm room, which was legal in our state as long as one party consented to the recording, and waited for the right moment to confront her. The opportunity came on a Thursday evening when Chloe came back from dinner in a great mood, wearing a new designer dress that probably cost more than I made in a month at my 3 part-time jobs. "Chloe, we need to talk about something serious." "What's up?" she said, looking through her new shopping bags. "I've been reviewing my financial aid records, and I discovered some scholarships on my account that I never applied for." Chloe froze for just a moment, but then continued unpacking her shopping. "Oh, weird. Maybe the financial aid office made a mistake." "I don't think it was a mistake. Someone used my personal information to apply for scholarships in my name and then intercepted the money." "That's crazy. Do you think someone stole your identity? You should report it to the police." The fact that she was suggesting I report it to the police while knowing she was the perpetrator was incredible. "Chloe, I know it was you." She turned around and looked at me with what appeared to be genuine confusion. "What are you talking about? You think I stole your identity? I have evidence that you've been using my social security number and personal information to apply for scholarships, then redirecting the money to accounts you control." "Amanda, that's a really serious accusation. Why would you think I would do something like that?" "Because I have records showing that my email was accessed from your laptop, my banking information was changed to accounts linked to your name, and the timing of the scholarship disbursements matches exactly with your expensive purchases." Chloe sat down on her bed and was quiet for a long moment. Then she started crying. "Amanda, I'm so sorry. You're right. I did take some of the scholarship money, but I was going to pay it back." "Some of the money? Chloe, you stole over $47,000 from me. It wasn't supposed to be permanent. My parents cut my allowance last year because my grades were slipping and I panicked. I saw how good you were at getting scholarships, and I thought I could just borrow some money until I figured out another solution." "Borrow? You stole my identity and committed federal fraud." I know, but I was desperate, and I thought I could fix it before anyone found out." "Fix it how?" "By continuing to steal from me while I work 3 jobs to pay for food." Chloe was sobbing now. "I didn't think about how it was affecting you. I was just focused on solving my own problems. Chloe, I've been living on ramen noodles and working myself to exhaustion while you've been spending my scholarship money on designer clothes and expensive trips. How did you think that was okay?" "I wasn't thinking clearly. I was panicked about my financial situation, and I made really bad decisions. For 2.5 years, this wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. This was an ongoing criminal enterprise." "I know. You're right. I'm going to pay you back every penny, I promise." "With what money? And how are you going to pay back the opportunities one lost? The scholarships I could have gotten if you hadn't already stolen my identity to apply for them?" Chloe didn't have an answer for that. After our confrontation, Chloe promised to make things right by paying back all the money she had stolen and turning herself into the financial aid office. "I'm going to call my parents tonight and tell them what happened. They'll be furious, but I'm sure they'll help me pay you back." "Chloe, this isn't just about the money. You committed identity theft and fraud. This is a federal crime. I know, and I'm willing to face the consequences. But please, let me try to fix this privately first. If I can pay you back and make things right, maybe we don't have to involve the police. Against my better judgment, I agreed to give her a week to come up with a plan to pay restitution. That was a mistake. Over the next week, Chloe's story kept changing. First, she said her parents were working on getting the money together, but it would take some time because they didn't have that much liquid cash available. Then she said her parents were furious and refused to help her, but she was applying for personal loans to pay me back. Then, she said she had found a private lender who would give her a loan, but the paperwork was taking longer than expected. By the end of the week, it became clear that Chloe had no intention of paying me back and was just trying to buy time to figure out how to avoid consequences. But the final straw came when I overheard her on the phone with someone, laughing about the situation. Yeah, Amanda found out about the scholarship thing, but I think I've got her convinced to not report it. She's so naive, she actually believes I'm going to pay her back. That's when I realized that Chloe wasn't sorry about what she had done. She was only sorry she had gotten caught, and she was still trying to manipulate me. The criminal report. The next morning, I went to the police and filed a report for identity theft and fraud. I brought my comprehensive documentation of Chloe's crimes, including the recording of her confession. The detective I spoke with was impressed by the thoroughness of my investigation. Ma'am, this is one of the most well-documented cases of identity theft I've seen. You've essentially done our investigation for us. I'm an accounting major with forensic training. I treated this like a professional case. It shows. With this level of evidence, we should be able to get charges filed quickly. I also reported the fraud to the university's financial aid office and student conduct office. The financial aid office was particularly concerned because Chloe's actions had implications for the university's federal funding and compliance with financial aid regulations. This is a very serious matter, the financial aid director told me. Identity theft related to financial aid is a federal crime that could result in significant prison time for the perpetrator. The student conduct office informed me that if Chloe was found guilty of the charges, she would face immediate expulsion from the university. Within 48 hours of my report, Chloe was arrested on campus and charged with identity theft, wire fraud, and federal financial aid fraud. The campus reaction. News of Chloe's arrest spread quickly through campus because she was a high-profile student. Chloe was not only popular and well-known, but she was also the student body vice president and was scheduled to be the valedictorian at graduation in 6 weeks. She had maintained a perfect 4.0 GPA and was already accepted to law school with plans to become a prosecutor specializing in white-collar crime. The irony of someone planning to prosecute financial crimes while simultaneously committing financial crimes was not lost on anyone. Students who knew both of us were shocked by the revelation. Many people had seen our friendship and assumed we were very close, so they couldn't understand how Chloe could have betrayed me so completely. I can't believe Chloe would steal from Amanda, one of our mutual friends said. Amanda was always so generous and helpful to everyone, and Chloe seemed to really care about her. But some people who knew Chloe better weren't entirely surprised. Chloe always had expensive taste and always seemed to have money for whatever she wanted, another student observed. I wondered how she afforded her lifestyle, but I figured her parents were just really wealthy. The student newspaper ran a story about the case, and the details of Chloe's fraud became public knowledge on campus. Chloe's legal situation deteriorated quickly. Her initial charges included identity theft, state felony; wire fraud, federal felony; financial aid fraud, federal felony; computer fraud, federal felony. Each charge carried potential sentences of several years in prison. Chloe's parents hired an expensive lawyer who tried to negotiate a plea deal, but prosecutors were not willing to be lenient given the scope and duration of her crimes. Your client engaged in a sophisticated, long-term fraud scheme that stole tens of thousands of dollars from a fellow student, the prosecutor told Chloe's lawyer during plea negotiations. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. This was an ongoing criminal enterprise. Chloe's lawyer tried to argue that she was a first-time offender with no prior criminal history who had made mistakes due to financial pressure from her family. But the prosecutors had evidence that Chloe's family was wealthy and that her financial problems were due to her own overspending rather than genuine need. They also had my recording of Chloe's confession, which demonstrated that she had been fully aware her actions were illegal and harmful. The university also filed its own disciplinary charges against Chloe, which proceeded on a faster timeline than the criminal case. The university hearing. 3 weeks before graduation, Chloe faced a university disciplinary hearing to determine whether she would be expelled. I was called as a witness to testify about the impact of Chloe's fraud on my education and financial situation. Ms. Johnson, can you describe how the defendant's actions affected your college experience? Chloe's theft of my scholarship money forced me to work 3 part-time jobs to cover basic living expenses. I had to choose between buying textbooks and eating meals. I had to take out additional student loans that I'll be paying off for decades. And I lost opportunities to apply for scholarships that I might have received if Chloe hadn't already stolen my identity to apply for them. Did the defendant's actions affect your academic performance? Yes. The stress of financial hardship and working multiple jobs definitely impacted my ability to focus on my studies. My GPA suffered because I was exhausted from working so many hours just to survive. How did you feel when you discovered that your roommate and friend had been stealing from you? Betrayed, violated, angry. Chloe knew how hard I was working and how much I was struggling financially. She watched me eat ramen noodles for dinner while she spent my stolen scholarship money on expensive restaurants. She knew exactly how much she was hurting me, and she didn't care. Chloe's lawyer tried to portray her as a troubled young woman who had made mistakes due to psychological pressure and family expectations. But the evidence of her systematic, long-term fraud was overwhelming. The disciplinary panel deliberated for less than an hour before finding Chloe guilty of academic dishonesty, fraud, and conduct detrimental to the university community. Her punishment: immediate expulsion from the university, forfeiture of her degree, and permanent prohibition from re-enrollment. Chloe would not be graduating with our class. Her law school acceptance was rescinded. Her academic achievements were nullified. 4 years of college were erased because of her criminal behavior. The graduation day confrontation. This is where the story gets really satisfying. Chloe's expulsion meant that she could not participate in graduation ceremonies. However, because of a bureaucratic delay, her name was still listed in the graduation program as the valedictorian speaker. The university had planned to make an announcement at the ceremony that Chloe would not be participating, but they hadn't updated the printed programs. On graduation day, I was sitting in the audience with my family when the dean of students took the podium to begin the ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin today's ceremony, I need to make an announcement regarding our scheduled valedictorian speaker. The audience grew quiet, expecting a routine announcement. Chloe Martinez, who was originally scheduled to deliver the valedictorian address, is no longer a student at this university due to disciplinary action. She will not be participating in today's ceremony. There were murmurs of surprise from the audience, many of whom were parents and families who didn't know about Chloe's situation. Instead, our valedictorian address will be delivered by Amanda Johnson, who achieved the highest GPA among graduating students after academic records were reviewed following the disciplinary action. Wait, what? I was being called up to give the valedictorian speech. It turns out that when Chloe's academic records were nullified due to her expulsion, the university had to recalculate class rankings. My GPA, which had been slightly lower than Chloe's, was now the highest in the graduating class. I was the actual valedictorian. As I walked up to the podium, I saw Chloe in the back of the auditorium. She wasn't supposed to be there, but she had apparently snuck in to watch the ceremony that she was supposed to be the star of. She looked devastated as she watched me take her place at the podium. I gave a speech about perseverance, overcoming adversity, and the importance of integrity in achieving success. Sometimes the greatest challenges in life come from the people we trust most, I said, looking directly at Chloe. But those challenges can also reveal our own strength and resilience. They can show us who we really are when everything is taken away from us. The audience, many of whom now understood what my speech was referring to, gave me a standing ovation. Chloe left the auditorium before the ceremony was over. 2 months after graduation, Chloe pled guilty to federal fraud charges and was sentenced to 30 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. She was also ordered to pay full restitution of $47,000 plus interest and to perform 500 hours of community service. The judge was particularly harsh in his sentencing remarks. Ms. Martinez, you committed a sophisticated fraud against a fellow student who trusted you as a friend and roommate. You stole not just money, but opportunities and peace of mind from someone who was working hard to achieve their educational goals. Your actions show a callous disregard for others and a sense of entitlement that is deeply troubling. You have forfeited your college degree, your law school acceptance, and potentially your entire career in law. These consequences are the direct result of your own choices, and I hope they serve as a lesson about the importance of integrity and honesty. Chloe's parents attended the sentencing hearing, and they looked devastated by their daughter's situation. But they also seemed genuinely shocked by the extent of her crimes. We had no idea Chloe was doing this, her mother told me after the hearing. We thought she was doing well in school and managing her finances responsibly. We're so sorry for what she did to you. I appreciated their apology, but I also wondered how they could have been so oblivious to their daughter's expensive lifestyle that was clearly beyond her means. The financial recovery, getting the stolen money back from Chloe, was complicated because she had already spent most of it on luxury items and experiences that couldn't be easily recovered. However, Chloe's parents ended up paying most of the restitution to avoid having their daughter face additional financial penalties that could have extended her prison sentence. I received a check for $47,000 plus interest, which covered all of the scholarship money Chloe had stolen from me. But the real financial benefit came from the fact that I was now eligible to receive the scholarships that had originally been awarded to me. The financial aid office worked with the scholarship organizations to reinstate my awards and provide the funding I should have received originally. I also received several new scholarships specifically for students who had overcome significant adversity, including identity theft. By the time everything was resolved, I had enough money to pay off my student loans completely and still have savings left over. The career impact. The skills I developed during my investigation of Chloe's fraud ended up being incredibly valuable for my career. I had essentially conducted a professional-level forensic accounting investigation, complete with comprehensive documentation, financial analysis, and evidence preservation. When I applied for jobs after graduation, several employers were impressed by my real-world experience with fraud investigation. You saw the complex identity theft case using forensic accounting principles, one interviewer told me. That shows initiative, analytical skills, and attention to detail that we value highly. I ended up getting a job at a prestigious accounting firm specializing in fraud investigation, partly based on my experience with Chloe's case. My starting salary was higher than I had expected, and I was fast-tracked into their forensic accounting division. Ironically, I now investigate financial crimes professionally, including cases similar to what Chloe did to me. The personal growth. Beyond the financial and career benefits, the experience of dealing with Chloe's betrayal taught me valuable lessons about trust, friendship, and standing up for myself. I learned that it's possible for people you trust completely to be living double lives that you never suspect. I learned that when someone betrays your trust, the appropriate response is to protect yourself and seek justice, not to enable their behavior by keeping their secrets. I learned that I'm stronger and more capable than I realized, and that I can handle difficult situations with intelligence and determination rather than just emotion. Most importantly, I learned to trust my instincts when something doesn't seem right, even if the person involved is someone I care about. The current situation. Chloe is currently serving her prison sentence at a federal facility about 200 miles from our college town. She has attempted to contact me several times through letters and through mutual friends, always claiming that she's changed and wants to apologize more fully. I have not responded to any of her attempts at communication. I don't hate Chloe, but I also don't see any benefit to maintaining contact with someone who betrayed me so completely. She made her choices, and now she's facing the consequences. I've moved on with my life. Her parents occasionally send me updates about her situation, apparently hoping I'll show some interest in her rehabilitation. They tell me she's taking college courses in prison and working toward a degree in social work. I'm glad she's trying to better herself, but her personal growth doesn't change what she did to me or eliminate the consequences of her actions. The lasting impact. 3 years later, I'm successful in my career, financially stable, and in a healthy relationship with someone who values honesty and integrity. I still have trust issues with roommates and close friends, and I'm probably more cautious about sharing personal information than I used to be. But overall, the experience made me stronger and more confident in my ability to handle difficult situations. I also became somewhat of a campus legend at my university. The story of how I investigated my roommate's fraud and got her expelled at graduation became part of campus folklore. Current students sometimes reach out to me for advice when they suspect financial irregularities or fraud in their own situations. I always tell them the same thing. Trust your instincts, document everything, and don't let loyalty to someone who doesn't deserve it prevent you from protecting yourself. Update: I recently heard that Chloe was released from prison early for good behavior and is working at a non-profit organization helping ex-offenders find employment. I'm glad she's trying to make positive changes in her life, but I still have no interest in reconnecting with her. Some bridges are burned permanently, and that's okay. Have you ever dealt with a roommate or close friend who betrayed your trust? How do you balance loyalty to people you care about with protecting yourself from their harmful behavior? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments.